Namo Amida Buddha. 7. Contemplating the suffering of the intermediate state or bardo. After describing each of the 6 realms of samsaric existence, I find it important to also explain the intermediate state between death and the next rebirth, Antarabhava in Sanskrit or bardo in Tibetan. All beings pass through this state, which is itself filled with various dangers and sufferings, depending on the individual's karma. But first, let me say a few words about the process of dying. Not all beings die in the same way. Those who cultivated virtue and who die with a virtuous mind, that is, while remembering their good deeds or focusing on good thoughts, may see various pleasant images as though in a dream. Their death is comfortable and they do not feel too much pain in their bodies. On the other hand, those who did evil deeds and who die with an unvirtuous and attached mind experience immense suffering when leaving their bodies. Quote, when those who are currently cultivating non-virtue die, they experience signs foretelling the effects of the non-virtue they have engaged in. As if in a nightmare, many unpleasant images appear to them. When those who have committed serious non-virtuous actions observe these unpleasant signs, they experience physical pain and their hair stands on end. They shake their hands and feet, void urine and excrement, reach up towards the sky, roll their eyes back, drool, and more. If they have been moderate in their non-virtue, then not all of these things will happen. Some will, and some will not. End quote. Those who are somehow neutral in cultivating virtue or non-virtue, or their mind does not dwell on neither virtue and non-virtue at the moment of death, they have neither pain nor pleasure when they die. The consciousness or the mind stream leaves the body in different ways for different people. Quote, among those who are currently cultivating non-virtue, consciousness leaves the body coming down from the upper parts, which become cold first. When it reaches the heart, it leaves the body. The consciousness of someone who is currently cultivating virtue leaves coming up from the lower parts, and the body becomes cold from the lower parts. In both cases, consciousness leaves from the heart. The point at which consciousness first enters the fertilized ovum becomes the body's heart. Consciousness finally leaves the body from where it first entered. Given that at first the heat of the body either descends from the upper parts and gathers in the heart, or ascends from the lower part and gathers in the heart. End quote. So, the consciousness or mind stream leaves the body from the heart region, enters the intermediate state, and then goes to its future place of rebirth. However, we should not think that going to a future place of rebirth is a voluntary process. That is, the bardo being does not look for its next birthplace as if choosing or deciding where to go. In fact, his own karma pushes him in the direction of his next birth, like a strong wind which cannot be resisted. Bodhisattva Vasubandhu, our second patriarch, put great efforts in explaining and defending the existence of the intermediary state, by quoting various sutras and offering many logical dharmic explanations. He said, quote, Scripture also proves the existence of an intermediate being. We read in the sutra, 3 conditions are necessary in order for a son or daughter to be born. The woman must be in good health and fertile. The pair must be united, and a Gandharva must be ready. What is the Gandharva if not an intermediate being? End quote. He also said, quote, what is an intermediate being and an intermediate existence? Intermediate existence, which inserts itself between existence at death and existence at birth, not having arrived at the location where it should go, cannot be said to be born. Between death, that is the 5 skandhas of the moment of death, and arising, that is the 5 skandhas of the moment of rebirth, there is found an existence, a body of 5 skandhas, that goes to the place of rebirth. This existence between 2 realms of rebirth, gati, is called intermediate existence. End quote. As explained in a previous chapter, All the physical and mental elements of a being are classified in 5 types of skandhas or aggregates. 1. Form, a generic name for all kinds of matter and the body. 2. Feeling or sensation. 3. Perception. 4. Mental formations or mental states. 5. Consciousness or mind. A Gandharva, or a person passing through the intermediate state, has all the 5 aggregates or skandhas. Although his body is not composed of flesh and bones like ours, we may definitely call his form a body, as it has perfectly developed organs. This body or form looks like the body he will have in his next rebirth. Vasubandhu said, quote, "What is the form of an intermediate being? An intermediate being has the form of the being of the realm of rebirth to come after his conception. The action that projects the gati, or the realm of rebirth, is the same action that projects the intermediate existence by which one goes to this realm of rebirth. As a consequence, Antarabhava, or intermediate existence, has the form of the future realm of rebirth towards which he is going. The dimensions of an intermediate being are those of a child of 5 or 6 years of age, but his organs are perfectly developed." End quote. Not only the organs of an intermediate being, Gandharva, are complete, but he can also move through any material object. Quote, "His organs are complete. No one can resist him. Even a diamond is not impenetrable to him." End quote. He has other supernatural capacities too, like being capable of moving through space. Quote, "He is filled with the impetus of the supernormal power of action. He is a karma divagavan, endowed with the impetus which belongs to supernatural power, that is, the movement through space which issues from action, karman. The Buddhas themselves cannot stop him because he is endowed with the force of action." End quote. Moving through space may seem a joyful thing, but in fact it is very troublesome for the intermediate being. If when he was alive he could let his mind wander into any direction, but the body stayed in one place during the bardo, or intermediate state, if his mind thinks about a particular place, he will automatically be there. Then again, just when he arrives, he will go to another place at the next thought. Thus, an unstable mind experiences a constant and painful changing of scenery. Being carried in many places like a feather blown by the wind, the bardo person might feel confusion, frustration, and fear. Another capacity of an intermediate being is seeing at a great distance and perhaps through various objects. Quote, "It possesses, by virtue of its actions, the divine eye." End quote. This divine eye should not be understood as a divine eye possessed by a Buddha or a very advanced bodhisattva, which is obtained through higher knowledge or purity, but just as a supernatural eye of the intermediary state. The Buddhas or bodhisattvas can see him with their divine eye, as Vasubandhu explains. Quote, "He is seen by the pure divine eye, that is, by the divine eye that is obtained through higher knowledge, for this eye is very pure. He is not seen by a natural divine eye, or a divine eye obtained through birth, such as the divine eye of the gods." End quote. He is also seen by and can see other intermediate beings of his class, that is, other Gandharvas who will go to the same places of rebirth as him. Quote, "He is seen by the intermediate beings of the class to which he belongs." End quote. However, some Gandharvas, or intermediate beings, might see Gandharvas from other classes too. Quote, "According to other masters, a heavenly intermediate being sees all intermediate beings. A human intermediate being sees all intermediate beings with the exception of heavenly intermediate beings," and so on. End quote. A Gandharva can also eat. Quote, "Does an intermediate being of Kamadhatu eat, like the other beings of Kamadhatu, solid food? Yes, but not coarse food. It eats odors, from whence it gets its name of Gandharva, meaning he who eats odors." The meanings of the roots are multiple. Of, if one takes it in the sense of to go, justifies he who goes to eat odors. Avati, gachati, voktum, A Gandharva of low rank eats unpleasant odours. A Gandharva of high rank eats pleasant odours. End quote. The intermediate state appears differently to different types of intermediate beings. The Descent into the Womb Sutra says, quote, for someone who is to be reborn a hell being, the intermediate state is like a charred log. For one to be reborn an animal, it is like smoke. For one to be reborn a hungry ghost, it is like water. For one to be reborn a deity of the desire realm and a human, it is like gold. For one to be reborn a deity of the form realm, it is white. End quote. The existence of a Gandharva or intermediate being is short, as Bodhisattva Vasubandhu explained. Quote, how long does an intermediate being exist? There is no fixed rule. It lasts as long as it does not encounter the coming together of the causes necessary for its rebirth. End quote. However, all the sacred texts that treat this topic agree that it does not last longer than 7 weeks or 49 days, during which it certainly finds the conditions for rebirth. Quote, the Vedanta Vasumitra says, an intermediate being lasts 7 days. Other scholars say that it lasts 7 weeks. According to others, if the causes have not come together, the intermediate being is born in conditions analogous to those where he would have been reborn. Cattle are not born during the rains, nor black bears in winter, nor horses in summer. But on the other hand, there is no season for buffaloes, etc. The intermediate being, who, if it is the season of rains, would be reborn a cow, is reborn a buffalo. In the same way, a jackal instead of a dog, a brown bear instead of a black bear, or an ass instead of a horse. End quote.